ever wondered why everyone else seems to have life figured out and you're just winging it? You're in the right place, friend. Welcome to the We're All Winging It podcast, where we normalize the weird stuff, simplify the messy bits, and support you through life's most challenging adventures. So today, we're exploring boundaries. We'll discuss how to identify when a boundary is needed, how and when to communicate boundaries, what to do when people push back against them, and how to handle any guilt that arises as you set and hold boundaries. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie McCready, and I'm joined today by Anna-Marie Inman, a licensed clinical mental health counselor, and my co-host. Hey, Anna-Marie.
Hi, Steph. Oh, I'm so glad to be here with you today. As I think about boundaries, one of the first things that I kind of think about or comes to mind is how do we know when to set a boundary? I think there's a lot of questions behind that because of the stigma that boundaries has. So one of the things to think about is to recognize when you're interacting with people, whether you have physical feelings after being with someone or emotional depletion, and kind of just feeling, wow, that took a lot out of me after being with someone. Now, there's going to be times that comes up, but if you realize it happens all the time with said person, then there might be an issue to maybe evaluate. Also, recurring discomfort. So if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, or you're feeling disrespected, or if your gut just says something isn't right. Our gut is so naturally true to what is going on. We have to listen to that gut. Also, remember that compromise priorities. So like if your self-care is suffering, if your goals aren't aligning and it feels that drain again. So those are the general signs that mean it's time to think about what a boundary could look like.
I think that is really helpful, and something that really stood out to me was that idea of watching for signs of depletion. Like, how do I feel after an interaction with someone? And I think what I'm hearing you say is that we're not talking about an isolated interaction. Everybody can have a bad day. We're really talking about the net sum of interactions with a person over time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you start realizing it. I like how you summarize that net sum, because you're going to have off days and knowing like, okay, God knows this is the third time I feel drained. And just kind of thinking, I wonder what's different. So analyzing it.
I like that. So say over the course of a month, I've seen a particular person maybe 2 or 3 times for coffee. And, 2 of those 3 times I leave there feeling just overwhelmed. And I'm realizing, okay, it might be time to set a boundary. Like, how do I create that boundary and know that it's an appropriate and reasonable boundary for that specific person and situation?
Well, I definitely think reasonable really is the right word. It solves a real problem. It focuses on your own behavior, not the individual that's wearing you out. Because you're not trying to control how they interact with you. You're just trying to control and manage the space you're allowing for the relationship and what it takes out of you. And so it needs to meet the needs without unnecessarily restricting that person. Does that kind of make sense?
I think it does make sense. I'm just going to kind of ping back at you. So when I'm setting boundaries, I shouldn't be trying to dictate what the other person is doing. I should be just clarifying for myself what I will and will not be engaging in, accepting, or tolerating.
Yes, it is definitely about yourself and deciding what you will or won't tolerate. This also, I think, is an important place to say you do not have to announce or tell someone what you will or will not tolerate. It is a matter of putting it into action. So one example is always available mom-daughter relationship. One sign that possibly a boundary is needed is your adult kids or an aging parent call at all hours, and you find yourself a little bit resentful and a little bit exhausted going into each interaction. And so, there are times that we are going to be in those seasons of life that we are caring for people. That's understandable. But figuring out how to create a boundary that works well for you to get the rest you need and have an understanding, right? So, a reasonable boundary to say in this case is, I'm not going to take calls after 9 p.m. unless it's an emergency. I'll always call you back first thing in the morning. But what that does is it puts the focus on your behavior. It solves the depletion of you not feeling like you have the space you need. You let them know you're going to call them back. And it doesn't tell them that they can't call. It's just letting them know that you'll answer within a timely manner.
Right? They don't have all access.
Yeah.
But you're also not like saying, don't call me,
Right. Yeah. You're just trying to create a little space for yourself. I've been the sandwich generation before. I've had the kids and the mom be taken care of. And you do need a little bit of that space. And so I think being able to carve that out for yourself is valuable. Another example could be a friendship scenario where it only goes in one direction. And sometimes it happens by accident. Like you can have a conversation at some point, maybe, but sometimes you try to have the conversation and there's not a resolve. And so then you figure out how to put a boundary in place. And so the sign that it's needed is, every time you go to coffee or lunch, it turns into a 2-hour download of that other person's problem. And then you drive home feeling kind of hollowed out. That is when you got to figure out what to say and how to be thoughtful about it. So you start setting a time limit. See, this is one of those scenarios where you've decided in your mind, you're setting the time limit, but you're not necessarily announcing the whole thing behind it. And, you actually give them a response such as, hey, listen, I actually have something I need to process today. And after you've given them time to talk about some things, you let them know what you want to talk about. And sometimes that is what it needs. If someone is a giver, they have to be really intentional to say, hey, me over here, I need a little something, and then bring up whatever they have going on. So what do you think about that example?
That really resonates with me. And not because I have terrible friends. I have great friends.
Right.
But sometimes I tend to view my value in what I provide for others. And it can be really challenging for me to be honest about my needs.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity to put someone else's needs first.
Well, yeah. And it's not that you're like being a martyr, right? You have a tendency to think of the other person first and think, oh, well, I might not need to do that. But it really is part of reciprocal friendship. And so I think most people probably could relate to that. And sometimes they don't realize they need that boundary.
But if you've kind of gotten into those grooves as you're the support friend and they're the venting friend, I think that can be a hard rut to get out of. And it sounds like this is a great way to do that.
Absolutely. I will share here too that, I was having coffee with a friend earlier today, and she was reminding me the importance of a boundary in a scenario for me. And I just started laughing. And I'm like, are you counseling the counselor? And she was really cute because she said, well, you're not wanting to say the hard things. I'm like, I do really good saying the hard things. What you talking about? But it was really cute because I realized what she said was I was doing the thing where like, oh, nah, it can wait for later. But it didn't need to wait for later.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes having someone who can call you out too in relationships to say, hey, don't forget about reciprocity. What about another example? So maybe a work individual. Maybe it feels like you're constantly having to answer messages from a coworker. I know this is relatable to a lot of people.
Right.
Messages from a coworker during dinner, or your sleep is suffering because they've opened that tab in your brain right before you've gone to bed. And you're feeling depleted with your own family because you feel like you're needing to fill in the blanks at work. That is a moment that we need to figure out, okay, how can I create a reasonable boundary? Because I don't mind helping, but I just don't need to be on E.
Right.
So something along the lines of, I don't respond to work messages after 6 p.m., like letting them know, just shooting a text back. Hey, I can get back to you on this tomorrow, but I'm tied up.
Yes. That makes total sense.
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to, you let them know, right, what to expect. And then it hopefully isn't going to be some fit of, oh my God, I can't believe you cut me off or you didn't, help me out in that moment. You try to choose a good time when you're going to put the line in the sand. But it's in your control. You're not trying to get them to change their behavior. They can reach out to you, but you're letting them know, I'm not going to be able to get back to you after such and such time, or it'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, and I feel like that's almost in line with like the always available mom-daughter relationship. I think it could be uncomfortable that first time you do it, but if you've communicated, if there's an emergency, you will make yourself available. but then you've created this practice of not answering past 6, people get used to those routines. Like we make such a big deal about setting those boundaries, but really, if we can get through that uncomfortable phase of shifting our practice, I feel like then it becomes easier, right? And people adjust typically.
I do too. And I think, we don't want to over explain ourselves, but sometimes if we help them see our point of view in a situation, they're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that your whole file in your brain opened up. Oh my gosh, I did not mean to do that. Right. So it's really about creating that dialogue of like, hey, we get each other. And I think we need that in relationships, whether it's work or home,
Yeah. That's interesting that you said not over explaining, because I actually have another example from a listener that maybe demonstrates that act of over explaining a bit, if you feel like working through that with me.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. What was the question here?
So a listener said, a friend recently asked me to help her move. Instead of politely declining their request, I responded via text, of course, hey, I'm so sorry. I would love to help you, but I just don't think I can. I have been exhausted lately. I have something really important I need to do that afternoon. And honestly, my back has really been hurting me. I feel really bad about this, and I hope you won't be upset with me. That's a long one, Anna-Marie.
Oh my God, that is so funny. You covered all the bases, Chica. Over explaining. It's a problem, but it's a problem because you're giving that individual all the ammunition to argue against each point. Exhausted? Oh, hey, it's not going to take long. Come on. You have something else to do? Oh, well, that can wait. What you talking about? This is going to be fun. You know we're going to laugh with each other. Or your back hurts? Take some ibuprofen, girl. So a boundary, it's not a negotiation. You just basically need to deal with it and think about it like you're setting a cup down. Just set the cup down. Don't announce that you're setting the cup down. Just set the cup down. Some other ways to go about it and say, I'm not going to be able to help you. You want to drop the apology. Don't want to do that lengthy justification that you just use. And listener, listen, you could simply say, thanks for thinking of me, is what that listener could say, right?
Sure.
Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm not going to be able to help.
Yeah.
Another option would be, I have other commitments. I need that time to rest, but not giving, too much information. I think it's good to have canned answers. So sometimes these are good because you just need to be able to pull out something. Yes, you do want to be truthful, but sometimes you just need something that's not lots of information, but allows you the space you need. So I'm not available to talk about it right now, or I'm not comfortable lending money, but I'm happy to help you brainstorm some other options. I can stay for an hour and help with the heavy lifting, but then I'll need to head out. Yeah. So, those type things they're short, they're clear, they're firm, they're not mean, but, there is a difference. Yeah. So do those sound fairly reasonable, you think, in your thought process?
They do. And I think what's really important that I'm pulling out, and I know we've talked about this previously, if I have time to think about something, I'm usually really good about providing a thoughtful, clear, kind answer.
Sure.
But when somebody catches me off guard, that's when I have that mental meltdown of like, oh my God, I don't want to do it. And I need to make them understand that I just can't, so they aren't mad at me, And then verbal vomit comes out, and I just need to have these canned answers.
Well, and I do think, and that's why I think it's good to have little cheat sheets or canned answers to kind of go to, because when we get caught off guard, we do want to answer for what's best in taking care of ourselves. Boundaries are really about self-care. Yeah. It's not about being selfish. It's about making sure you got the space that you need for what you need.
And I'm just going to pop in here and say, like, boundaries can be with ourselves too. If we say yes to everything, a boundary with ourselves when someone asks us something like this can simply be, let me get back to you. And you are the one that has taught me that. Like, take a beat. Let me get back to you.
Yes. This is one of the best things I learned when I had my children. Gonna have to get back to you on that one. And, unfortunately, I don't mean it in a bad way, but if they really need an immediate answer, they're going to call somebody else and get what they need. Right.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Right. Because someone has helped them. We are not having to jump ropes. Yeah. This just made me think of a scenario too that you just said, we get caught off guard.
Yeah.
I just had an invitation to go to listen to some really great bluegrass music.
Yeah.
And, it's spring in North Carolina and everywhere it feels really good. And I'd love to go, but it's a work night for me.
Yep.
And it would mean I needed to drive an hour after work, hang out for about an hour, and then drive back home an hour.
Yes.
And I just had to be honest. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to make it. I just can't do stuff like that on work nights. And that's really as honest as I can be about it. I mean, I will not be a good therapist the next day.
Right?
So it is about taking care of self. And it's what we need to do for ourselves.
100%. What I'm getting from this conversation today is to not forget that my needs matter too. And I need to advocate for my needs. What I'm wondering is what happens when we're dealing with someone that maybe doesn't have our best interest in mind and they aren't respecting these boundaries, whether we're communicating them or not.
Pushback means that the arrangement no longer is working or benefiting for that person that it was.
Yeah.
And so that's not your problem. The reaction is actually evidence that the boundary's working. And that's, kind of taking like, okay, a deep breath. Okay, well, I'm getting the space I need, but they're a little bit frustrated because they're not getting what they normally do. So some of the things you can do with this type situation is, acknowledge their frustration without apologizing. So you can validate someone's feelings without backing down. Acknowledge, I can see this is frustrating. Or I know this isn't what you wanted to hear, and then say the thing. But I think that lets them know you care, because we do care. It's not that we don't care. It's just trying to take care of self.
Yeah.
I really am a fan of the broken record technique with people that push back on the same thing over and over. And that's where you calmly are just repeating your boundary without getting drawn into an argument. So in other words, I understand you're disappointed, but I'm just still not available. And I know that sounds kind of like blah, but it's saying, yeah, I know you can ask me 5 times, but again, I do understand that there's disappointment, but I'm just not available. And so that's a good one. I hear that this is hard for you, and my answer is still no, right? That's another one. So you're not being, too much. You are acknowledging they're not thrilled, but still kind of holding your ground. JADE is acronym for don't justify, argue, defend, or explain. Okay, so the more you engage with the objections, the more you're signaling that your boundary is up for debate.
Ouch. Okay, that hits home.
And that's just it, is we don't want to debate it. We want to be like, yeah, this is just kind of it. Mic drop. I guess my visual is a mic drop, right? So it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning, right? Ammunition.
Yes.
This is one of the places where I would also say you say the thing and you walk away, or you say the thing and you hang the phone up. You choose a disengaging action in that moment, so you're not signaling, okay, I'm here to talk about it.
That, I think, for me, that hits home, especially in my spousal relationship, right? Like there's a part of me that is feisty and gets that like being clear in our communication doesn't have to be a negotiation.
Right.
And so when I hear that broken record technique, and no shade to my spouse, but like, right?
No, totally. It's just how it is sometimes.
It is how it is. But then like, instead of just doing that, I also want the big win. I want to hear that I was right. So I will engage in that or defend my reasoning or my position.
And then it leads to something else.
It does. And it explodes when it really was just, is it your turn to empty the dishwasher or mine? Like,
that's right. That's right. Yes. That's a really good example.
So I have to say, like, hearing you frame this, and this is why I love these conversations, you approach them in a really down-to-earth way. And hearing you frame it in this way makes it seem so simple. But I just want to remind myself and our listeners, simple doesn't mean easy. And in fact,
no, it does not. So unfortunate.
Yeah. So the last thing that I have kind of swirling around in my brain is that I know for me, when I'm setting and holding reasonable boundaries, there is often a certain amount of guilt that will bubble up. And I guess what I'm wondering is, what happens when that inner critic pipes up and makes us feel like we're the bad guy?
Yeah, I think it's really natural. Guilt after a healthy boundary, it's normal. It is definitely not a sign that you did anything wrong.
Yeah.
Um, this reminds me of guilt. So my church ladies, I call them the silver foxes. They're the older ladies at church.
Uh-huh.
And the silver foxes were really disappointed when I started having to, I worked more and was volunteering less. And I remember someone saying something to me that made me feel guilty. And I remembered thinking to myself, okay, you can't feel guilty. You have to be present for the children. You can't go and sit with the older ladies and have coffee like you used to. You have to have those boundaries. So the guilt part is sometimes natural. And you're also going against years of conditioning in some scenarios, right? Your nervous system is reacting to taking a stand or drawing a line. And so your nervous system is trying to adjust to a new normal from the old conditioning.
Yeah.
And newsflash, guilt is not your moral compass. Feelings are not facts. And sometimes feelings feel really factual. Okay. But that doesn't feel good in the long run to pay attention to that. We have to remember that guilt is not the moral compass. So it gets easier with practice. And I think you mentioned that earlier, right? It's the first couple tries that it feels a little bit, ow, eeks, feels like it's hard. So the guilt diminishes over time, particularly when you realize that you're not as depleted or worn out and like, oh God, I really enjoyed that hour with so and so. I don't feel like I just had this life sucked out of me. And that's not bad. I'm not saying relationships are bad. I'm using examples that is how sometimes how we feel. We're human.
Yeah.
So, people who care will respect your limits. Let me just say that one more time. People who care will respect your limits. Even if they're disappointed at first, they're going to understand where you're coming from, that you're not trying to be hurtful. And so those who can't, it really provides you valuable information about that relationship. And it doesn't mean it's a complete lost relationship. It just might mean you understand a little bit better the value in that relationship.
Yeah, I think for me, it means it's time to maybe reevaluate what I'm bringing to the table and what they're reciprocating. And if that is continually unbalanced,
Yep.
then that might be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes we are going to feel worn out, but these things that we've talked about today hopefully will be helpful.
I think they will. And I have to agree with you. Some of my most treasured friendships have weathered really hard conversations. I think there is something so rich that happens when two people come together in vulnerability and leave a conversation with deeper understanding and new ways to honor and accommodate each other's needs. As you're talking about people who can't respect our limits, it makes me realize avoiding boundaries almost always fosters feelings of resentment, frustration, even exhaustion. And it affirms that fear that I'm just not good at setting them. When really what I am willing to do is deprioritize my own needs until I'm not.
Eventually, one of two things happens. Either you explode in anger because you've hit your limit.
Yeah.
Or you completely shut down and withdraw from the relationship altogether. And that is hard.
Yeah.
Neither of those outcomes is kinder than setting a clear boundary in the first place. Setting boundaries doesn't make you the bad guy. It just means that you value the relationship based on mutual respect. And it's not a one-sided accommodation.
Wow.
So I think that's really what it's about is, you want to have the space that works for both parties in a relationship.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I know younger me has lost a handful of friendships because I was not good at setting boundaries until I was. And the boundary was, I'm never talking to you again.
Right. I think at a later point, Steph, we can go back and talk about sometimes when there are scenarios that call for that, but it's really rare occurrences. And so, maybe at another time we'll loop back around and talk about that because there are hard things and it's a hot topic in today's world. We'll carve out time to have another conversation concerning that. Does that sound good?
I think that sounds great because I do think there's a lot more here we can explore. And I'm even interested in digging into boundaries with ourselves. Like that one that you taught me of I'll get back to you. That was gold. And I'm sure you have some more of those golden nuggets that you can share with all of us.
I love it.
Gosh, Anna-Marie, I just want to thank you so much for all you shared today. I think one of my favorite takeaways is that boundaries are a kind and necessary element of all healthy relationships.
Yes.
And like you've told us multiple times today, setting a boundary doesn't automatically mean we're being difficult. It simply means we're advocating for our own needs.
That's exactly right. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for organizing this. It's a pleasure to be able to share these things with people outside of a clinical setting.
Well, Anna-Marie, as we wrap up this episode, we want all of our listeners to know this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and it's not meant to be a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you're struggling, please reach out to a licensed therapist or counselor. We've provided a link to Psychology Today in the show notes, which is a highly respected resource to locate licensed therapists in your area. All right, Anna-Marie, thanks again for being here with me today. I'm really excited to dig into all the things in the coming episodes. And hey, friend, if you'd like to learn more about the podcast, download transcripts, or search for a specific episode, visit our website at we'reallwingingit.com. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Our username is at we'reallwingingitpodcast on all platforms. You can also subscribe to our newsletter by visiting substack.com/We're All Winging It podcast. Until next time,
we're all winging it.
Let's wing it together.